So we're continuing the mimer with L'Hovin Inyan Simchas Torah of Tafshin Lamed Ches. The flow that we've been talking about, that is that the mimer has talked about the aspect that Tishrei, the month of Tishrei, from the point of view, reflects a level of achas, a level of oneness, and that's reflected in all the Yom Tovim of the month of Tishrei, starting with Rosh Hashona, which is reflected with the idea of shofar, the shofar being the mitzvah of the day. The mitzvah of the day is listening to the blowing of the shofar. The shofar is something which is evokes within us the special idea of tshuva, but it is a decree achek. Yom Kippur also has very special aspect about oneness. That is, it's the unique day which the Kohen Gadol goes into the Kodesh Kadoshim, and it's expressed in the oneness of all the activity happens through the Kohen Gadol on this specific day. And we pointed out in the mimer that it has a special aspect of the oneness, the one person who is appointed to serve God which is the Kohen Gadol at the one point in time, which is the day of Yom Kippur, in the one specific place, which is the Kodesh Kadoshim. That is in the three dimensions of Zman, Mokom, and Nefesh. The idea of spirituality, the idea of time, and the idea of place, that all unites in the aspect of oneness. And then Succos also has the aspect of unity, in that all the Jews unite under the same sukkah, or they could potentially unite Royam Lias Leisheb Sukkah Achas, that is, that they could all dwell in the one sukkah because they all receive from the great infinity, the great makifim, the great encompassness of Hashem. And that theme is expressed in the mitzvahs of the taking of the four kinds of the lulav and esrog set and all the individual species, as we expressed last time, have an aspect of achas, of a unity, and when they together represents all the different type of Jews, and that is the idea of achas, the oneness of the Jewish nation. Now we're starting section Daled, section 4, and we continue with the text. In order for this unity to continue in a truthful manner, to establish itself in an amitis, in a true manner, and therefore, as brackets, bubas kayoma, become an everlasting unity. In order for that to happen, in order to happen amongst Shekol, Daled, Suki B'Yisrael, and to be incorporated in all the four types of Jews, amongst the four categories of Jews, that is to say that the idea of the unity of the Yontiv, and within the people, they come together at this time. For this unity to be a lasting, it must be true in that it is something beyond a constraint which will tear it apart. Unity that comes as because of something else, because of something's forced on it, that's not necessarily a lasting unity, but it's unity which comes from within, from the Jewish people themselves. That can become a lasting unity. So how can the Bnei Israel, how can the Jewish people achieve that? He continues the Maimah, who al yedei tshuva. That is done by the idea, by the service which we call tshuva. So tshuva doesn't necessarily mean the technical sense of tshuva, and it's not being used here in the technical sense of tshuva, of repenting over a sin, but the tshuva, the idea, the extended idea of tshuva returning back to a level that is beyond differentiation in front of God, to returning back to the soul's core, the soul's essence, as the soul is connected in a complete connection with God. Therefore, if we can return, or if we can be affected by that level, continues the Maimah, then that unit, that level of return to Hashem is something which transcends any differentiation between the people. We go to the core of the neshama, where the core of the neshama is expressed as a chelik elokam mima'al mamash, a portion of God Himself, which that is beyond any constraint. And therefore, that this level of tshuva, this level of return, of going back to our core essence of the Jewish neshama, that generates an automatic unity. Continuing, and therefore that doesn't take a express amount of time. In fact, it is done in, as the expression is, in one instance, in one moment. That is to say that if you can get to this level of going beyond constraints, beyond his Succos, beyond how that every individual has got their own personal differentiation, and go to the essential core, then we can all unite, and that can take an instant. It doesn't have to be something which has to progress over a period of time, but it can be done in one instance, or one moment. So therefore, it's not measured in days, in months or years. This is something which can happen in an instant. The Zehu Hefresh, and this idea of joining together and becoming one unit is expressed by the differentiation between the two sets of tablets, the two times when the Jewish nation were given the 10 Commandments, the first set of luchos and the second set of luchos, the first tablets and the second tablets. The first set of tablets, he starts to talk about the first set of tablets. That was something that God gave of Himself, and it was a part of Hashem's wisdom, and given as a present to the Jewish nation directly from God. As was the second, but the differentiation is, what the text tells us, this is the differentiation between the first set of luchos, the first tablets which were given, because that reflects, in the brackets, inyan ha-Torah matzad atzmai. This reflects the idea as Torah as it exists by itself, untouched by or unconnected to the humans, to the Jewish nation. It is God's will and wisdom that He's given us, expressed in the first tablets of stone. It's unaffected and comes directly from God, as opposed to the luchos hashenis, the second set of luchos, which, in brackets, inyan Torah al yedei tshuva. This is a Torah. This is the teachings of God, which is given, that luchos was given, but via and through the Jews having done the tshuva, have returned and wanted to make their connection back to God, and that second luchos, that second set of tablets was permeated with the essence of tshuva. We'll describe and we'll explain that as we go on. But we have to note that the second luchos, the second set of luchos, was actually given on the day of Yom Kippur, the day of, the day of an expression of unity. It was given on Yom Kippur because it expresses the entire idea of the tshuva of Yom Kippur. Continuing the text, the first tablets, the first set of time, the first commandments which we were given, the first luchos, the first set of the tablets of stone, they were given shebechdei lekabel luchos harishonos, in order to receive the first tablets. Moshe stayed, Moshe tarried, Moshe was with God Bahar in the mountain in Har Sinai, 40 days, till afterwards when he came back, until he came down with the tablets of stone. But Nesef, and even more so, so we see that the first tablets needed the period of time that Moshe Rabbeinu was there in heaven receiving the Torah, was needed the period of 40 days, and not just that 40 days continuing. And there was also the time of coming out of Egypt and the 7 days of the Spheres Ha'omer, which they had to count 7 sets of 7 weeks, each one of the 7 weeks representing the 7 spheres and the culmination and perfection of those 7 spheres. So after that period of time, when the Jews became to a higher level of perfection, they could then receive the Torah. So therefore we see that the first set of luchas needed a preparation, a general preparation of the spiritual Ha'omer period, as well as from Moshe's point of view, it needed that period of time that he was in Har Sinai for 40 days. But contrast that to Masha Enkain, the luchas Hashenis, in the second set of luchas. Now, the second set of luchas didn't take a long time, a long period of time. Well, how do we exactly understand that? We know that from that time, when the Jews unfortunately were given the first set of luchas and they were broken, till the second signal was a long period of time, because we celebrate the first set of luchas at Shavuos time, and the second and the coming down and Moshe Rabbeinu coming down 40 days after that, till the time of Yom Kippur. That was a long period. That was in 2 sets of another 40 days. So therefore, it did take time, right? So what are we saying that it didn't take in time? So the Rebbe continues to explain and says, "Hare arbem yain shehaya Moshe ba'arahu," because that time, that set of the 40 days from Rosh Hashona to Yom Kippur, when Moshe Rabbeinu came down with the second set of luchas, why was he there? Why was that? Be'ikah, that was mainly because in order to affect by Hashem, in order to ensure that the giving of the second set of luchas was done in a way, that in a way that Hashem had completely reconciled with the Jewish nation, and that there wasn't any vestiges of any issues in relationship to not being reconciled with the Jewish nation, and that was why Moshe Rabbeinu spent that time over there, in order that Hashem should give it b'simcha b'leiv shalom, so that luchas would be received, and he would receive the Jewish people in a joyous and wholehearted fashion. But after that was achieved, but after that, once that was achieved, and we had the idea of mechila and kapara, we had the wiping away of all the sins, which is the effect of Yom Kippur. After that moment in time, Hashem gave to Moshe Rabbeinu the luchas immediately. Therefore, therefore we can say that the luchas were given immediately in an instance of time. So therefore, what do we see? That the second luchas and the idea of tshuva has the idea that it can be done. It can be done in one moment. It doesn't need an expanse of time. And why is that? Because the idea of tshuva, as we expressed before, the idea of tshuva is not something which is locked into the constraints of the order of the spiritualism, because it's something which goes beyond. It's something which rises above and beyond the constraints of creation and the creative Seder Ishtalshalos. Continuing, this idea, that this whole idea, that there can be the tshuva done in a moment, Madgish, this emphasizes she'inyan tshuva hu lamayla makol medida b'agbola. This emphasizes that tshuva transcends any limitation whatsoever. Makol midah, from anything which is a constraint, v'hagbola. Mipnei, and why is that? Because tshuva are mitis, because a true tshuva, and that's the emphasis that we're building in this paragraph, in this section, the idea of what constitutes the true tshuva. True tshuva was something which is a mitis, which is emes, that encompasses and reaches to, as he says, mipnei tshuva amitis magas, because the true tshuva, the essence of tshuva, that reaches, and he says in Yiddish to emphasize the word, der nimmt, it grabs, it takes over, but pnimius, the inner core, the atzmis hanefesh, and the essence of the soul. And shebechina zu hu limaylam es chalkos. And when we talk about the core, when we talk about the essential nature of the neshama, there's no boundaries to that. Shebechina zu hu limaylam es chalkos, because this level is beyond any differentiation. That is, it expresses the idea of the achas. It expresses the idea that what we've been talking about, the idea of the achas of the festivals, the oneness of the festivals, and therefore it can be done in one moment, and that can be done benefesh within the soul, and that can be done by all the people at once. Hence, and therefore this can constitute building a unity, an achas, a oneness, as reflected in the festivals themselves, right? Amongst all kol asug Yisrael, amongst all the portion, all the different gradations within the the Jewish nation, and using an expression, quoting an expression from the Chumash, which we've read very recently. It continues and it connects all the different differentials of the Jewish nation, as was expected by Moshe Rabbeinu in the beginning of the parsha, which is called Atam Netzovim, right? That you are all standing, and Moshe Rabbeinu then says, "You are all standing." And who are all the people that are standing? All the gradations of the Jewish nation, which was in front of Moshe Rabbeinu at that time. So he says, from your heads, shivteichem, are the heads of your tribes, ad to all the people who have the lowest category of workers amongst Israel, the wood heavers and the water drawers. Referencing that verse, and then when he joins when they are all joined together, all those different groups, then we can truly say that Atem Natzovim, that you all stand in front of Hashem. What does it mean, stand? We'll go forward. What is it? The verse says, verse Atem Natzovim Kulchem, you are all standing, all of you. What's the idea of all? Because everybody's been fashioned. All of you have been fashioned together as one group. And then when this level is joined and fused together, then nitzovim, then you are standing, then you are all standing. And if we use another usage of the word nitzovim, literally nitzovim means to stand, right? So you all gathered and standing here. But we can use another expression. There's another meaning in nitzovim that can be another context, and that is nitzovim, to stand up straight and firm like the king himself. You are all united like the king himself. Who's the king? Hashem. Atem Natzovim, Maloshan Nitzav Melech. You are standing like the ones who support, who prop up, who are deputies of the king. So you stand with the strength and the power of the king. And then Yisrael Nasim Malachim. Then the Jewish nation and all the people of the Jewish nation, independent of what level we're talking about, Nasim Malachim, they become kings. And when you become a king, who Balabatim, you become a master. You become in charge of Al Kol Metzias Olam, all aspects of the world, spiritual and physical. And then the Rebbe adds, as if in brackets, but it's not in brackets, the Rebbe adds a blessing to everyone. So since we are now Malachim, we are now kings, we are now Balabatim, we are now the authority over the world, then that should bring to us, we should all be inscribed and sealed with a good and sweet year in a revealed and apparent good, or in every single way, and within the physicality of the world, even in the physical matters. Now, going back to the topic, and this is because we've tapped into the essential core, where we've tapped into the core, where there's no differentiation between physical, spiritual. We've gone even beyond that. We've tapped even higher. There's no differentiation between Maila and Lamato, above and below. And therefore, this takes over the entire gamut of the spiritual worlds, not just the four spiritual worlds, but the entire gamut of the spiritual world. And we then become beyond, we tap into the level via this tshuva, a connective point with Hashem in his essence. Now the Maimon wants to go back and explain the medrash which we introduced in the previous class. The previous class we talked about the medrash about a king and his daughters, and they went and they were married off some places, and then they lived in some far places and some close places, and then they came together on one day. So going back to this medrash, recalling that medrash, L'Hovin Inyan, the medrash mentioned that all the daughters came back Yom Echad on one day. Yom Echad by Kulam Nishel Sholem HaMelech Avihem. They go on one day, on the same day, they all came together to visit the king. Navid Kulam Chad Yom. So therefore, in response to they all coming, the king said, I'm going to make a special day. I'm going to make a special day where I will rejoice with them. Since the medrash has used a specific expression, we are now going to analyze that expression of the medrash, and we're going to fit it into the context of how we've been learning. Since the medrash said Yom Echad, what's the specific Yom Echad? Which day have we been talking that is an Achas B'Shana, the one day in the year, the Achas B'Shana? That refers to, he continues, Yom Echad Shabo Kulam Nishel Sholem HaMelech Avihem. That one day when all came to be together with the king, that refers to that unique day. That is the Achas B'Shana, the once a year, Hu Yom Kippurim, is the day of Yom Kippur, which is called Achas B'Shana, the one day in the year, that special day which exhibits the idea of oneness. Begam Achas, and also it not only expresses that specific day and aspect of time, but as we discussed before, it's also in the other dimensions, what we mentioned, not just the dimension of time, but also the dimension of space, being in the Kodesh Kedoshim, in the Holy of Holies, as well as in the soul. And as we said, Begam Achas the Eila Nefesh, also in relationship to Eila Nefesh. Umizeh. And from this, because they all came together, this is the analogy of the medrash, because they all came together, this evoked by Hashem that he wants to do, therefore he wants to make for them something special. Kula Chad Yom Tov, he wants to make them a unique one day of festivity. Now that unique one day of festivity, this is the idea, Shekei al Simchas Torah. This refers to the festival that we have, the Simchas Torah festival. Shehu Gam Ken Yom Echad, because it is also a special one-day festival. It's a unique one-day festival. Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah is considered a one day in Israel, or 2 days in Chutz La'aretz, but it's a special, separate festival, and it exhibits Bechinas Achas. It exhibits that characteristic that we've mentioned before, the idea of the oneness. That is to say that when the Jews celebrate the giving of the second tablets on Yom Kippur, that's connected to tshuva, and that's connected to that celebration which we do on Simchas Torah. And hence, because this is something which is evoked via tshuva, and we said before that tshuva is something which can be expressed l'mayla meseder shtalshus, beyond any differentiation. Therefore, we now have an answer to our previous question. When in the first class, we asked the question at in the beginning of the section, what's so special about Simchas Torah? We asked the question, what is so special about Simchas Torah that all Jews together, even the ones which don't connect to the Torah the rest of the year, or obviously connect to the Torah the rest of the year, they all come together and dance on Simchas Torah. And we asked the question, what is that? What is this essential connection that all Jews have to Simchas Torah? Jews of all stripes, not just the intellectual ones, but also the ones, or also ordinary, simple Jews. So we asked, what is that connection? With this, we have the answer. We have the answer that via the tshuva, via the evoking, by coming together on the Yom Kippur, the day of Achas B'Shona, Hashem grants us an Achas B'Shona, a similar day called Simchas Torah, where we dance together with Him, and that evokes Hashem's response of oneness, because that evokes Hashem's response of oneness. That's beyond any limitation. So therefore, all Jews come on that day of Simchas Torah, and they all dance together with with no differentiation, and they're all inspired to come to celebrate with the Torah on that day. So this ends the paragraph number 4. Now we want to continue with this idea of the oneness of the Simchas Torah. So therefore, we continue in section Hay in the fifth ace of the Maimah, and we've said that the three festivals, the idea of Rosh Hashona, Yom Kippur, and Succos, all have the idea of Achas. That culminates in the Achas of Simchas Torah. Continuing, so the Maimah then continues. V'hinei his eris the bechinas Achas shebenefesh. This level of the wakening up of the Achas in the soul, shalamaylam is Succos, that's beyond any division. Sorich, it needs to come to a culmination. It needs to come to a culmination with a view to a long-term connection, so that the tshuva is everlasting. Therefore, he continues, sorich lahamshicha b'dargas. So therefore, you have to bring the achas aspect, the achas feeling, the unity, the oneness feeling, and you have to bring it into, even though we have Simchas Torah, and Simchas Torah goes beyond all the differentiation, but nevertheless, we have to bring that power and bring it into, number one, the soul, then to all the places, and then at all times. So continuing, you have to bring it down into the different divisions of spirituality of nefesh, and to bechinas his chalkos. And even though there are different spiritual levels of his chalkos, because at the end of the day, every Jew has his own emphasis. He has his own makeup, which is basically defined through the Esa spheres, through the 10 spheres, but he has his own particular emphasis, and this should come down in those divisions that you have, but permeate and to elevate and to redesign so that they're more aligned with the idea of achas. Continuing, now the arousal of the essence of a soul has to be done through some sort of act, some sort of physical act. Kamei Ba'asiyas the yeshiva b'sukkah, for instance, like the mitzvah of sitting in a sukkah, or the mitzvah which is natilas dalet minim, taking the 4 kinds, or the idea of what we do on Simchas Torah, which is rikud b'raglayim, which is we dance with our feet. But all of these mitzvahs have to have an aspect of achas which connects to the mitzvahs that we do. Because continuing that verse which we spoke about in Atim Netzovim, that's what the verse continues. It says, "Kulchem," everybody joins together. Shekol Yisrael heim ba'efen kulchem. Everybody is in a way of all of you. Matzad b'chinas achas shebehem, and they join together with their achas, the dimension which transcends. But nevertheless, the verse speaks about Marina achakach kol esasukim, kol esasukim beprotis. But then we talk about all the different levels of the Jews. So even though the pasuk says Atem Natzovim Kulchem, and we're looking from the point of view that everybody is united, Kulchem, everybody's standing strong, everybody's like a melech, a king. Nevertheless, there are differentiations. There is the head of the tribes, and there is the wood choppers. So, and that continues. The pasuk mentions the different individuals, from the heads of your tribes, till the wood choppers, and the water drawers. That is to say, the inyan kulchem, the idea of the achas, the essence of the jewel, b'china achas d'Yisrael, tzarech liyas nikar. It has to be obvious. It has to be seen. It has to be recognizable in their individuality. Their achas, that they're connected to Hashem in a way that is beyond, has to be recognized in their individuality. And like they are in their discrete identities, and therefore this has to be not just in their spiritual sense of the neshama, but in the other dimensions that we mentioned. We mentioned the 3 dimensions of nefesh, zman, and nefesh, shona, and mokom. So therefore, it has to affect the other aspects, as we introduced at the beginning. That this has to reflect in the three dimensions, in not just at the Yom Tov time, but throughout the entire year. And not only in the one place in the synagogue, but in all places where the Jew is. And that should be, so therefore he says there should be mirrored in the other areas. Shebechinas Yom Echad, because the aspect of the one day which was evoked by the daughters coming to visit the king has to be reflected through to Simchas Torah, and then continue pa'eles. It should continue and affect on pirut in its division on perles unfirt on, and it continues on mit alle yemei Hashona, and it continues on with all the other days of the year. Maschil me Israel Chag, and starting on the day immediately after the Yom Tovim. Shachol protei asiyose, and every detail that a person does. And every single detail that a person does, in general, we have the commandment of, as he mentions in the brackets from Mishlei, b'chol ma'asecho, b'chol derechecho, in all your ways you should know Hashem, and you should recognize Hashem. So in every path that you do, but it should be nikur, it should be obvious. And he continues in Yiddish, right? As is that it's obvious and recognizable on the person that he's coming from the influences of the achas of Simchas Torah, and that affects and permeates the entire day. And this is affecting his entire year. And even though it might be that a person might find themselves post many days or many weeks and even many, many months from Yom Kippur and the Simchas Torah, those 2 times of achas. But a person drags with him the feelings that he has of the achas, of the unity that he's felt with God on Yom Kippur and with the Torah on Simchas Torah. And Afopi Kain, and nevertheless, his eris, the Yom Echad, Eina Nechleshes Klal. And a person should be in a state where the influences that he felt on those days haven't weakened at all, and are still, but Sokva Amidus, they're still standing in the original intensity, and they're still trends. How can you do this? We introduced before at the beginning of today's class. How can a person do this? Because it comes from a level of tshuva which is not the tshuva of regretting of sin, but it's the level of connecting to Hashem on the highest level. The idea of tshuva meaning returning to our original state of when we return to our essence and core, which is beyond any differentiation and any changes. That level, which is expressed in the verse of Bechinas Ani Havai Eloi Shanisi, that level of which we expressed where Hashem says that I myself, I God, my highest level, Shaloi Shanisi, doesn't change. It's all the same, and it's all got this highest level of godliness and spirituality in it. But and through this strength that we find of the strength of the one day, that achas, which transcends all levels, then nimshokas, then it can be drawn into the realms of division, just like the year is divided into the many days of the year. So therefore, in each day of the year, that achas gets permeated and gets inflected with that. And therefore, al yedei through that, each day, each physical place and each place in time, each day, al yedei nase ilui, everything becomes elevated. Gamba b'china d'yom echad, everything gets elevated to the idea, to this highest level. And how can you do that? This is, and where do we see that this can be done? We've talked, because we talked previously about the mitzvah of the esrog, where the esrog has a specific characteristic we spoke about before, al derech machin nizbar, like we mentioned previously, al nizbar lil, what we mentioned previously, b'inyan pri eitz chodo, in relationship to the idea of the esrog, which in the Torah Shebeksav, in the Torah, is called the pri eitz hoda, the beautiful fruit. And we explained that the word hoda means beautiful, but also gives an inkling to the idea that it continues through all the seasons. And not only does it go through all the seasons the entire year, but the Talmud learns out the lesson from it that it can affect everything else. And therefore the other 3 kinds, which are together with the esrog, are affected in a similar way, that they become beautiful. So therefore our whole year becomes permeated with the achas, just like the esrog permeates all the other components of the set of esrog, of the lulav and esrog. It permeates and influences them, that they should be of the highest caliber. So also our year, our time, and all our days of the year, and all the places where we visit, all have to reflect the idea of the achas, the unity, the idea of tshuva, as we've talked about, reaching to Hashem and connecting to Hashem on the highest level. Asher, continuing and ending off this section of the Maimah, Asher loy rakshahu sevel, and therefore it's not just that the esrog accepts and can tolerate the kol shini havirim, all the different seasons of the year, el shahu god gidul mehem, but it actually grows from them. It draws from the 4 seasons and grows in its strength from them. And so also we also have to grow from our experiences of the whole year, drawing down the achas, and we are getting strength from the whole year to go further. And with this, this, and with this is the end of this this paragraph, this section of the Maimar, Ace Hey, and we'll conclude that, like, today's class, and we'll finish off the Maimar in our next opportunity. And we wish each other that we will grow, and in all aspects, in both of these aspects that we've just mentioned, in all the coordinates, in a strength of the unity, so it shall be an everlasting unity. Thank you.